Hey everybody. We are now approaching the full moon in Scorpio. And so this is a time where we're being tested intensely because that's the nature of Scorpio. It's an initiation. And Scorpio invites us to change, to transform through an intense emotional experience. So, in your own waking world, chances are, as we approach this full moon, there will be a situation where how you respond is critical. Experience, which is all we can do. That's, how we embody wisdom. I've had a situation here where the frustration of somebody not acting honorably has kept me up at night. It's like, oh, it's the injustice of it. And I got something today. I realized that, Scorpio has a very bad PR campaign, and I'm a Scorpio, seen as a sign that seeks vengeance, revenge, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth kind of mentality. And I finally understood today what that's about. Scorpio is a catalyst for the shadow. In other words, wherever we are, we will bring up the shadow. Okay. So just by our very presence, things that had been under wraps or unconscious, not acknowledged, not integrated, come to the fore. And that can be challenging. Okay. It can be frustrating because if you speak it, then you're the one who's likely to be scapegoated. Okay. The old shoot the messenger, how dare you say that when you're just calling it as you see it. And the reason Scorpio calls out the shadow is because if we don't acknowledge the shadow, it destroys like a cancer, it erodes. So, we must acknowledge the shadow. We must acknowledge what isn't working in order to heal it. Okay. It's like the pus that sits in a boil. It's got to be lanced. It's got to come out. So you might find if you're sitting on old emotions that a situation activates those emotions coming out as we journey towards this full moon. But ultimately, Scorpio is an invitation for us to step more into our power. And what is power? It's our ability to respond. How we respond when we're triggered is what has it's like a sliding door moment, what sets our trajectory for the next chapter. If we react from wound, from the lower self, from the child or the teenager, we escalate conflict, we escalate karma drama, we get hooked in. The challenge is to not feel that if we don't administer the justice, it won't be taken care of. So if we think about Libra, the previous sign to Scorpio, the sign of the previous full moon, it's the scales of justice. Okay. So if we think something isn't fair, that's what really ignites our rage. And let's face it, the opposite of Libra is Aries, ruled by Mars. Well, Mars was the old ruler of Scorpio, the sub-ruler of Scorpio. So we get hot-headed and reactive if we think our needs aren't being met, if we think others aren't considering us and things aren't just. But for us to progress to the next sign after Scorpio, which is Sagittarius, to become the happy-go-lucky wanderer, one who has a philosophy that means they don't get hooked in to create more karma drama, to escalate conflict. They trust that that person will reap what they sow. They're making their own karma, that we don't have to be the judge and juror of others. We only have to look to ourselves and our own behavior and try and be as impeccable and in integrity as we can be with ourselves and others. Because what often happens if somebody is out of integrity, if somebody is not honoring their word. I mean, integrity literally is honoring your word with deed, with action. And if somebody doesn't do that, of course it triggers us, okay? But it can be so draining to try and bring somebody to account who is not willing to acknowledge their wrongdoing or their unconscious thoughts or words. Yeah, somebody who is in service to self, i.e., ego dominant, they're always blaming everyone and everybody outside of themselves. They're never turning the mirror around and looking at themselves and going, what was my part in this? The older we get, the more soul dominant we get. This usually, the turning point for this is midlife, which is why it's such a big initiation. And if you want to know more about that, check out my retreats. And just a small plug, you've got 48 hours from the time of this being filmed to get the early bird discount. So that's finishing on the 5th of the 5th. So yeah, if you're thinking about coming, now's a good time to book. Go to themoonwoman.com if you want to find out about my midlife retreats. So what happens is the more we try to motivate someone to be honorable, be accountable, the more drained we become. Because ultimately, we can't control anyone other than ourselves. We can't, life will initiate them. Life will make sure that justice is done. So we're likely to lose precious time and energy if we engage by trying to make somebody see how their actions are dishonoring. Okay. And I'm not saying don't speak up for yourself, but if somebody demonstrates that they really aren't interested in doing the right thing, cut your losses. Because Scorpio is the sign of death. And what is death? It's letting go. Letting go is surrendering. As the saying goes, let go and let God. There is no greater act of power than the act of surrender. So no matter what's happening as we approach this full moon, no matter how you get triggered, how you want to react to try and reinstate justice, remember, surrender this up. This is a test. Because if you retaliate, you will get hooked in and spiral down into entropy and become bonded to somebody that doesn't serve you. Whereas if you can let go, you will ascend, you will spiral up because you've made the better choice, you've been the bigger person. You have transcended your own egoic reaction. That's our challenge as we journey towards this full moon in Scorpio. Now, easier said than done, especially when we've got the screws being put on us by the globalists who are cranking up inflation and creating scarcity consciousness. Because let's face it, if someone's hungry, they'll do anything. Okay, if someone's scared about not having enough money, they're more likely to compromise their own truth. And Scorpio is very much about truth. But with the North Node in Pisces, one of our main lessons as a collective right now is to not succumb to our fears, to paranoia, to worry, because then we manifest our worst nightmare, the thing we don't want to happen because we're obsessively focusing on it. So again, how do we transcend that? We surrender our fears up to a higher power. And it doesn't matter whether that's Yeshua or Kuan Yin or Ganesh, Allah, doesn't matter what name it is, but the quantum field of infinite loving intelligence manifested through all avatars, through all dimensions and all time and space, or lack thereof. The potency is in surrender. So, I'm reminded of the journey of the 13th path, the path of the high priestess in the Kabbalistic tree. And this is the longest, the most perilous path. And she must walk from the heart to the crown. So this is the journey of ascension, right? But in order to do that, she's got to walk through the Sephiroth of the third eye, which is called Darth, as in the dark, Darth Vader. You've got to journey into the darkness, and that's the time we're living in. And what is the darkness? It's simply our fears. It's the unknown, it's chaos, it's loss of control. So, of course, the ego wants to escalate control when faced with, a lack of control. In fact, I just saw an ad of, what's his name? Tony Robbins, saying exactly that, in times of chaos, you want to control things more. And he was seeing that as a good thing. Whereas the way of the sacred feminine is the opposite. It's the maturity to acknowledge that we don't have control of anything. Yeah, the greatest skill that we can develop in these times of chaos is our ability to adapt and respond with awareness. And the more we harness our own ego, the more we can do that gracefully. Now, Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. Pluto is a dwarf planet, but potent, okay? Size really doesn't matter. Because Pluto is about, what happens when everything is intensified and then it explodes. Okay, so it's a building up of inner pressure that causes the explosion, if we think about atomic or plutonium energy. So you might feel like exploding as we walk towards this full moon. Okay, you might have a meltdown. And if you do, be accountable to those that were affected. Forgive yourself rather than punitively whip yourself, because that doesn't serve anybody or anything. But Pluto is moving into retrograde. And that is an opportunity for us to see our shadow more clearly. Okay. And it's in Aquarius, and Aquarius is the collective consciousness. So we're going to see the shadow of the collective consciousness more than ever. But with it moving into retrograde, this is an opportunity for us to see and understand how the more we transmute our own shadow, the more we can positively impact the world. So responding as an alchemist rather than an activist to the global crises. In other words, if we transform ourselves, of course we transform the world, the butterfly effect. So this is a time for doing deep shadow work for the collective, because the more we move into unity consciousness, the more we're in the frequency of 1111, the 11th sign, the sign of the new age, Aquarius. And, what is shadow? Well, it's dealing with the taboos, which is sex, death, blood, the things that initiate our psyche down into the roots of the tree of life, to try and make sense of them, to try and make sense of the mystery. And traditionally, this was the work of the mystic women, the Magdalens. We would help people to make sense of what was unresolved in their psyche, make sense of the chaos and the dark times. Now, Aquarius is also the age of light, and we will know when we're in it. We're going to experience a solar event which is going to shift how much light is available on planet Earth. And I spoke about that in my last video, Ascension Update, on my channel. By the way, if you want to make sure you always receive an update, do subscribe to my channel. So it makes sense that for us to be in the light frequency, we must deal with the dark. All that is not light is coming up to be seen, journeyed, and integrated. Those are the 3 stages of transformation. So everything is coming to light. We are seeing so much of the global shadow, those that were held up, on a pedestal as being celebrated human beings. So many of them are being exposed now for what it is they did, their devil's bargain, in order to gain that recognition on the world stage. This coming week, we also have exact Beltane and Samhain. What's that? Well, so in the Northern Hemisphere, Beltane is the rites of spring. And this is the portal of birth. It's the vortex on the geomagnetic grid of the earth it's a birthing portal. So the traditional date was May 1st. So, traditionally we'd celebrate with the maypole and women would dress up as the May Queen and wear a flower crown. But the exact date is May 5, which is a powerful portal, the 5th to the 5th. 5 is the number of change. It is 5 elements that create magic, the creative raw elements of the earth which comprise our bodies. Hence the 5-pointed star was sacred to Venus and women's mysteries. So this is a power day. So this is a great day to birth something publicly, and also to do sex magic, whether that's with yourself or with a beloved, but invoking harmonic union through your morphic field, through being a conduit for heaven and earth to meet in your heart, and through all dimensions, all archetypal selves, through the doorways of your chakras to ignite your rainbow body, the bridge of ascension between the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world. For those in the southern hemisphere, it's exact Samhain. This is the portal of death. So this is when people would traditionally dress up as their disowned self, their shadow self, the part that they need to love and accept and embrace and integrate. So if you struggle with your mental health, this is a flag that we're now going into the deeper, darker days for those in the southern hemisphere, where self-loathing, you're going to have to face your demons and have a showdown with your nemesis. So May 5 could be a challenging day for relationships, all types of relationships and interpersonal communications. We do have, speaking of communications, Mercury moving into Taurus on May the 10th. So it has been in Gemini, so puppy mind, short attention span, monkey mind. But moving into Taurus on the 10th means that our conversations are going to be a bit slower, a bit more connected, a bit more grounded, and we're going to be able to ground our intentions more easily, particularly in relation to creating security financially and in regards to our physical well-being. And this will probably be quite a relief for those of you that suffer from insomnia. There'll be less mental chatter. But the full moon on May 12, this is a cycle of death and rebirth. So have a think about that. What creates an ending? It's our ability to step out of the dance. to step up. In other words, we go round and round in circles, like the 12 months of the year, if we don't step out of time. This is why 13 was a sacred number. If we step out of the going round in circles, Groundhog Day, we create an upward spiral. And this is where the wisdom of the sacred feminine helps to serve, that we can take a higher perspective of our karma cycle and choose to respond differently. So this is a time where we're likely to be dissecting the carcass of an unpleasant situation or an intense situation which has triggered us by someone else's shadow behavior into us seeing our own shadow and being humbled by that. Because regardless of how much we meditate or do yoga or eat clean or, sit in the moon lodge, we will always have a shadow so long as we're in a body. So we need to be restorative in how we parent ourselves internally. In other words, positive self-talk that says, it's understandable that you responded like that, but now that you've seen it, let's look at our choices. So always looking at affirming the positive and how we can leverage an even more positive response to the current present situation, rather than castigating and punishing ourselves, which only serves to contract us more. Scorpio is about how we use our power. So we have an opportunity here to be empowered, demonstrate that we have inner power. If we don't have enough inner power, the way that we find power is by putting others down, finding fault, trying to elevate our own ego as superior and seeing others as inferior, so becoming very judgmental of others. And this is a time when we may be challenged on how committed we are to walk our talk, to live our truth, not just, preach one thing and do another. Finally, we'll have the Sun conjunct Uranus in Taurus between May the 17th and the 18th. This is the final time in this 7-year transit of Uranus through Taurus that this will happen. So in May 2018, 7 years ago, Taurus moved into Aquarius. And you may remember I was saying this is going to be when we're going to have earth changes, because Uranus is about sudden change, Kundalini, earthquakes, volcanoes in Taurus, the sign of the Earth Mother. So we're coming to the grand finale, so to speak. It will formally leave Taurus on July 7 this year, but it will return on November 8, which is exact Beltane and Samhain, but 6 months hence. So I think that's quite significant. It's certainly going to be an interesting time with the next eclipse season happening September 7, and then, the November 8 shift of Uranus into Gemini. We also have the Sun aligning with Alcyon, the great central sun, the brightest star in the Pleiades, between May 19 to 21. So that's a particularly potent time for any ascension practices, for meditation, for ceremony. If you can do some sun eating at that time, that would be ideal. So, this is, the last time Saturn was in Aries, which is what it's moving into, was 28 years ago. So this is, when we look at what was going on for us 28 years ago, and looking at what are we taking responsibility for now? Because Saturn is the planet of responsibility. Yeah, it puts the brakes on, or it says, right, you need to take action on this. And Aries is the warrior. So this is an invitation for us to really commit to a purpose that serves the greater good. But the ultimate way we can serve the greater good is in doing the shadow work, integrating what is not conscious and loving those younger selves so that we can make mature choices that don't escalate conflict. So, yeah, Kundalini is the key because there's 3 stages of the scorpion who does lash out. When we awaken our Kundalini, we then become the serpent, okay? As Yeshua said, be as wise as serpents. And then, like Quetzalcoatl, the winged serpent, when we raise those energies to the third eye and we create the inner marriage of the holy hermaphrodite and we make that shift to being soul dominant, we stretch our wings with an eagle eye and we embody the phoenix. So, yeah. I hope all of that was helpful for you. I wish wonderful initiation and may it be graceful. Thanks for watching. You've got my blessing to share this. And yeah, if you want to check out my retreats, if you're journeying midlife at the moment, it's particularly intense because it is an ascension process and we are going through a global ascension process as well. So if you're finding life intense and you need support, know you're not alone. Yeah, I'm also available to do one-on-one sessions to support people in midlife. So yeah, thanks so much for watching and have a great day. Ciao for now.